And then the bus pulled up and Mary Whitehouse fainted. So what can you do? Anyway, welcome to tonight's. What did we describe tonight as? That's a good word.
Well, isn't tonight supposed to be the serious business one?
No. We've kind of like, we did news on Sunday. We will actually in the end get the kind of like we'll get it in sync. Whereby
have we just abandoned all pretext of organisation and we're just going to wing it from now on? I'm good with that.
No, Wednesday will be the no, actually it won't, because next week is different again. We'll stick to the plan. Sunday, wait until the autumn, then we'll switch over then. So tonight is the midweek Borgoi Borgi. What's that? Blimey,
Borborigmus.
Yeah, that's it. That word. Yeah, Borborigmus. There we go. Borborigmus. You think I'd be good at this?
And that's why I'm here.
That's why you're here. Yeah, I know you make me look good. So any other business? That's it. So, how have we been?
All right. Well, I say all right. I haven't had a great week so far, to be honest.
Okay.
I've been actually quite. I haven't done any modelling since Sunday because I've been just overtired, and got a bit of a headache today. But it's all under control, and I did do a bit of modelling today. So yeah, it's just, you know what it's like. Sometimes those weeks just catch you out a little bit, and you just. I'm on early shift, and sometimes it just catches me a little bit unawares, and I'm just not feeling, particularly into it. But no, other than that, I should have just look. I'm British. I should just say no, fine, great, yeah. How are you?
Funny you mentioned that. No, I know what you mean, because I've been.
Disarming honesty wasn't what you were looking for, really, was it? You're looking for a. Good, and move on.
To be honest, like most British people, though, when I ask the question, "How are you?" and people say, "Well," it's usually after "well," I just zone out anyway. So I just sit there and just kind of go,
"Yeah, pretty much."
It's you wait for that pause, and then you just say something non-specific and move the conversation on. So no, I must admit, I did a couple of hours with the Ket and Crowd the other night, and it just got to the stage where I thought, well, I'm enjoying this, but I want to do something different. Yeah, there will be. I know. Actually, it will starting from this Friday. It will start getting a bit more intense because BBC Prom starts on Friday. So I will be tuning in. Yeah, I will be tuning in for the live performances.
Yeah, that's time.
Yeah, exactly, and also doing catch up with some of the shows that I can't listen to live. So yeah, suddenly my productivity in the workshop will go through the roof. So it's not like I haven't got things to build here.
It's a bit odd for me because the last couple of months have been extremely productive for me, haven't they, in terms of smashing kits out the last couple of months.
Mostly Mirages.
Well, you say that. Mirages, BE200s, Mackeys, drones, all sorts. It's been a very, very productive couple of months.
And also, apart from your kind of like your staple of Mirages, it's actually been quite a varied diet for you as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all aeroplanes, I would say. But having said that, I'm still got the Tamiya R35 and KV1 are still kind of. I'm sort of pulling them down off of the not on the shelf of doom, they're just put to one side. But I keep pulling them down for an hour here and there and doing a little bit on them and putting them back. So it's kind of like I don't class those as ongoing projects, if that makes sense. As in, I'm not really seriously actively working towards finishing them, if you know what I mean. It's just I pick up it and do a little bit here. I've been chipping that KV1 for about 2 months now, but total amount of time spent chipping it is probably about 4 hours, just taking it down for half an hour here and there and putting it back. So yeah, it's been a very varied diet. I'm still kind of thinking about that icebreaker that's due at some point.
Always jam tomorrow, isn't it? It's always jam tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, it's productive few months, and just the last couple of days I haven't felt like it at all.
I gotta say, I kind of when I was just doing some bits and pieces on the cat and crowd the other night, and I thought to myself, oh, I'll do some chipping, I'll do this and I'll do that, and actually I just went, no, do you know what? Just on this one, don't. Just keep it simple, keep it streamlined, get on with the figures. Then that's it. Then that's it. You've got 2 armor projects coming up where there is a little bit more scope to do that if you want. But it's funny enough, I was writing the op-ed for Brett today, and I was mindful of the fact that, talking about the need for variety. And I've noticed this, even if I'm kind of doing armor projects, is if I'm building armor projects and I feel like I've used the same techniques 2 or more times in a row, I suddenly think, I want to build an aeroplane. I want to build a car. I want to build a 24 scale HGV. There is a limit to where if I feel like I'm going through the motions, I'm repeating things, it's like, I just want to do something different now.
And I think again, you sometimes have to sit back a little bit and take stock of the fact that things like the Kettengrad are being built for a purpose. They're not being built. They're not being built. They're never going to go into your personal collection.
Well, pretty much nothing I'm working on at the moment, apart from the Whirlwind, which has been pushed back.
So
it's not for me.
Whilst it's fine to do, some of those techniques on them, what you're looking for essentially is a good clean build, aren't you? A good clean build that advertises the model rather than
exactly
rather than the innate skill of the builder. It's about advertising the model, isn't it? So
that you do have to be a little bit more, not professional, that sounds terribly pretentious. You just have to be a little bit more business-like. That's a good word, isn't it? Business-like.
You have to be aware of the requirements of the finished model.
Yeah. I mean, I've got that. It's down here. Here we go. Sorry, it just reaches out of back on a workshop here. God, my workout this is. I've got that to build at some stage.
Oh, nice.
Hoorah. Nice. Apart from,
it
is the SU kit. I don't think I've got my. Hang about. I haven't got my other camera set up here, so I'm not going to bother. It's actually, it's kind of like, what's it?
It's such an attractive aeroplane, though.
That's it. Yeah, it is.
Such an attractive aeroplane.
But the thing that I'm really kind of like, because I thought this will be a nice straightforward build, no rescribing, bang it together, some nice decal schemes. But the thing that's just got me scratching my head is that cowl, because they split it 4.5.
Oh, that looks like fun.
It might. Do you know what? It might actually prove to be less problematical than I think. We're going to be talking Tomcats a bit later on anyway. But I do remember when I was building my Tamiya Tomcat 4 years ago now, when it came to
2016, wasn't it?
I started mine in January 2017. So so when I was doing that, I'm just going to call the picture up. I'm going to put it up on screen. Yeah, is when I was doing that, and those metal leading edges to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, and in the end, I just got some Tamiya tape and a fresh blade, and just literally ran the blade into the panel lines. Got an absolutely perfect cut from it, sprayed the leading edges silver, lifted the masking tape, and that was it. It was job done. It's one of those things that you can sit there and you can overthink how you're going to do it, whereas if you actually just start cracking on with it, you suddenly go, oh, actually, I ended up using less gears than I thought I would.
I quite often find that with a model where there's something about a model that's you're finding quite intimidating, and you're going over 100 different solutions for it in your head. And when you sit down and just get on with it, it turns out fine. It's like if you need to, if you end up, your model is basically finished, and sometimes even the final varnish is on, and you realise there's something that badly needs sanding, and you think, oh no, it's going to strip the finish off, and I'm going to repaint it, and then you find that once you just bite the bullet and do it, invariably it's fine. Invariably it's fine. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm looking at that cow and I'm thinking, actually, I'm just going to have another look at it again. So this is a modelling program, people. You know, we're actually looking at some modelling because there's really no detail in between those bulges to lose.
No, I mean,
you look at the box art. The box art, yeah, okay. The box art has all that. That's how it should look. But I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, actually, put those two bits together.
Well, I would sand the two mating edges on a very, very flat surface, very gently with some 800 grit, just to make sure you've got the most perfect one you can. Use a very, very tiny amount of liquid cement and leave it for a couple of days. And then I suspect you're just going to be using some very fine wet and dry and a piece of Scotch-Brite, and it'll be fine.
Probably my black super glue mix, just in case.
We don't know how it's going to fit. If it fits
yeah, I think what I might actually do is I'll put it together, and then put this cow together. Then I'll probably give it a good coat of Mr. Surface of Black from a spray can, and then take all that off. So sand it until I've literally got rid of all the Mr. Surface of Black, and then have another look at it, and then see where we go from there. But
I think it's one of those jobs that is going to require nothing but time.
Yeah, but I actually think it probably isn't going to be as problematical as actually.
No, I don't think it's going to be problematical. I think it's just going to take time and a little bit of care.
Of course, the thing that I'm really struggling over here at the moment is, I don't know if you saw this, the schemes, right?
Yeah.
You've got nice, nicer. Then you have nicey nicer.
Is that Chinese?
Oh yes, but that one, no, I'm not touching that because that paint finish is just, that's mad, Ted. It's absolutely mad.
I never realised China used it.
Yeah. Then, well, that's the one I'm really gravitating towards because I do like that kind of scheme. Yeah. But then.
No, I like the camouflage Civil War one.
Yeah, right, that's it. We're done. We're sorted. We sorted. Yeah, that's my
favourite camouflage schemes anyway. So
yeah. But as I say, I mean, what I won't be doing with that is I won't be doing any rescribing. I won't be doing any detailing. This is going to be straight from the box. And I think that's part of the fun. Part of the fun is sometimes building these things straight from the box.
Well, it's what we discussed the other week with that the MB3 326, wasn't it, that I built? It was straight from the box. You know, I said, an extra sprue could have given it a brilliant interior, but as I wasn't allowed to do that because it was for the customer sort of thing, it's actually quite liberating in some ways to not have that as an option. I also think sometimes it does focus your finishing techniques in as much as you're almost kind of having to. I know you built that one, pristine and kind of concours, but I think sometimes when you're doing these kind of like projects like that you kind of look at the finishing side of it, and especially the weathering side, and you're thinking, I need to distract. I need to take people's attention away from the fact that this is potentially an old and not very well detailed kit, and just make them go, "Oh, you super detailed it." No, I didn't. I just gave it a bit of an extra paint job on it. So, well, yeah. I mean, with that Mackie, the black and red spine that I sprayed rather than use a decal, because it went so well, it's not going to attract attention, which means it's not going to attract attention to the cockpit. If you see what I'm saying,
exactly.
If I used the decals, it would never have looked as good as the paint job did because of the contours and stuff. The fact that I decided to spray it means that people are just going to go, "Oh, that's nice," but the eye is going to slide over it rather than go, "Oh, I can see a wrinkle in that decal, and I can see that there's none of that there." So people therefore aren't going to be sort of drawn to that area where the cockpit is. So hopefully it'll work that way.
Now, actually, a bit of housekeeping from the last show. I haven't yet asked Jen whether her airbrush has turned up yet or not. She's not made any noises about this Parsh, wasn't it?
Yeah, Parsh
Yeah.
Talon or something.
Yeah, Parsh Talon. So we're waiting to hear from that. As soon as we do, she'll probably do a video on her channel. But I might actually get her on to talk about it. Perhaps we'll try and get her on Sunday to talk about it if it's cleansed by then.
Yeah,
that'd be good. Yeah. Wayne A. Beatty makes a couple of very good observations here. He says, first of all, you can't put mud on that. No, I know, Craig. Wayne, rather.
It won't stop him trying.
Give it a go. And he also says, is it split along a panel line? No, alas, it isn't. That cowl, if there was a natural panel line between the front and the back of it, I'd just mash it together and I wouldn't worry about it. And
you check your DMs.
I am going to check my DMs. Hang about. We just got. Here we go.
Sorry, people. There's stuff going on behind the scenes.
Oh, for goodness sake! Right, bear with.
It's all go. It's all go. Somebody wants in. Somebody wants in. Gate crashes.
Absolutely. It's just like, do you remember that program used to be on the television called House Party? Used to be on lunchtimes, and it was like this kind of like scripted ad-libbing, and then the doorbell would go ding dong, and they go, oh, who could that be? Act surprise. And it's one of those dreadful 1970s kind of like television shows from the 1970s. Right, okay, we have live from Telford or Shropshire or thereabouts. He's back. The man who said he'd never come back. He's back.
We can't get rid of him. Just can't get rid of him.
Good evening.
Oh, hello.
Well, it was.
Hello. What did I miss then?
Well, nothing. We were waiting. We were just deciding whether we were going to let you in or not, because I said he's standing outside pouting and digging his foot into the soil. He wants in.
I just had this sneaking suspicion that you might be discussing something I might find interesting.
I think we will be getting there.
Yeah.
At the moment, we are still we're still wasting time, really.
You're ruminating on other things before you get to that particularly unsavoury part of the show.
Thorny issue of the day.
Right, Mike Williams says, I built that Henschel from Revell Boxing, if I recall correctly. Lovely kit. I finished mine as a silver Spanish one. Yeah,
that would be like two women turning up in the same dress, wouldn't it? You can't do the Spanish silver one now, can you?
No.
Mr. Williams has already done it. So
do you know what? Actually, it does make me think that, if somebody actually came up with a brand new tool 72nd scale, Henschel 123, like a really nice kind of like, almost like a special hobby did one, I would build that. Because that's the one Mike Grant did, if you remember, with the Airfix kit. Yeah, and it's like it's a brilliant scheme. And also, I'm just going to scroll through the comments here. Where am I? Ben Brown says, just picked up my new Airfix chippy. In a word, awesome. Yeah, it is. I think it is. I'm waiting to see what the reaction is going to be to that. And also, Kat Ludwell says, interesting. Evening to the interesting boys. She was referring to me and Drew. This is before Spencer turned up. So me and Drew, interesting. Spencer.
Interloper.
Interloper, yeah. The Interloping Modelling Company.
Yes.
Right. Okay then. Shall we tear
the plaster off?
Should
I bring this closer?
Yeah. Shall we put the waders on?
We can see the lie from here.
Yeah. Shall we put the waders on and start, going out into the river, into the quagmire, to discuss Tamiya decals.
Now, one of the interesting things I've learned in the last hour or so is that all three of us have absolutely no problem with Tamiya decals. And all three of us use slightly different methods.
We do.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? You'd think there would be a... you'd think that there would be a one solution would be the only thing that works. And sort of talking to John and seeing what you said, Spencer, in a post earlier, we all use slightly different methods.
We do.
And we all think they're fine.
My one question that always crops up And at the risk of editorializing a new update on my website before I write it.
I knew. There we go. Let's just have a quick look. There we go. He was there for 4 minutes and he gets the plugs in. Unbelievable.
The following question.
Right.
Does arguably the most intensely organized modeling company on earth, the one that strives for ease of use and perfection in their products across every single thing that they do modelers really believe that they would include a part of a kit that was of less quality than everything else in the box intentionally? Do modelers really believe that?
Seemingly so.
Because I can't quite believe that modelers would believe that. And in my experience, that hasn't ever been the case. There's always this one statement stands out above all others. And that is, Tamiya decals are far too thick for them to be used properly on a model kit. It is, without exception, nonsense. Always has been nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not the decal that's the problem.
Please tell me. It's the technique.
It's the technique.
And the thing that makes them look thick on the sheet is the adhesive, not the decal.
Absolutely. It's not like they've created decals that are 1/3 of a mil thick because of the printing. That's not what happens. And if you're struggling to apply Tamiya decals to a model, it's not the product, it's your technique that's at fault. And it's your technique that needs to be altered. It's as simple and straightforward as that. And I keep having this. This is why I wanted to join. I'm so exasperated by this constantly coming up. Every single time Tamiya decals get mentioned, it's the same old thing. They're far too thick. No, they're not. They're no different from any other decals. And they settle down the same way. You just have to alter your technique.
All right, box pop. Quick one. John?
Go on.
How do you apply Tamiya decals? Don't take any interruptions. Tell us how you apply Tamiya decals.
Right. Well, first of all, controversial bit here. I apply a nice, smooth, glossy surface of X22. Then I get a dish of warm water, hot to warm water. And then I cut them out. I never cut them out up to the varnish surround because that can actually create a ledge, which will be noticeable. I will sometimes use, for the most part, I will actually use Mr. Mark Softer, Mr. Mark Setter rather than Microsol and Microset, and I will use those sparingly. But I will make sure that the decal. Sometimes you have to make sure that the decal is really kind of wetted to get on the surface, because I've found with Tamiya decals is once they are introduced to a very smooth glossy surface, they're like limpets. They won't want to go anywhere. So I have to make sure the surface is wetted. Then I'll remove the excess with a piece of tissue paper, and then I'll give them a coat of the Mr. Mark Softer, and that's it. Occasionally I might cut them into a panel line if they're not settling in quite as much, but by and large they usually do. And then once I've done all the final checks, a few days later I'll seal them in with, if it's a flat finish, it'll be Galeria matte varnish. If it's a satin finish, I will probably actually use Tamiya satin or Mr. Color satin or Mr. Hobby satin. Apart from that, that's it. I think when I applied, I'm just going to bring up some images here, people, so bear with me. When I did the decaling for the F14, this is 4 years ago now. I honestly, is that the right? Yeah, there we go. I honestly can't remember anything about applying the decals to this, other than there were a lot of them. But even so, I just don't remember anything about it. It was such a, if I say anonymous experience, I mean that in the best sense, because nothing stuck out from it other than the sheer number, especially doing those sparrows and the sidewinders. And as you can see in that photograph there, the light is actually, if I zoom in a bit, there we go. Forgive the pictures. These are off of my old iPhone. These are the only pictures I've got of it. But you can see the light is kind of catching the edge of the navy thing there, the navy decal there. And there's, you know, there's nothing going on. You know, honestly, there's nothing happening there. There's no decal film, there's no silvering, there's no kind of like ridges or ledges or anything. They were an utterly forgettable experience in the best sense of the phrase.
And that's a compliment. Yeah, that's meant as a compliment, not a...
Yeah. We've got some more pictures that will pop up later on. But yeah, I mean, and when this is going back to Telford, or actually it's the last Telford from 2019, when I bumped into this model again, I hadn't seen it for a couple of years, I just remember looking at it thinking, A, oh, I like that satin finish on it, and B, was just that you really couldn't see that they were decals. But anyway, that's me.
Spence?
Yeah, I'm going to send John a couple of pictures, if that's all right. If I can,
go ahead.
If I can just do this, and then we can sort of see. My technique's the same, actually, pretty much. The only slight variation. So gloss coat, I use GX, which I think we've kind of been using for a while. So I use GX, full gloss finish. Doesn't matter whether I'm building something, whether an aircraft or something armored. It's always a gloss finish. Then I use Mark Softer and Setter. Now, I know I spoke to Andy Hills about this now. They've replaced those with the Neo solutions, so you can't get the originals. I'll send you these pictures, John.
Are they any different? Are the Neo solutions any different, or is it just a rematch?
I'm not sure yet, so I'm going to try them out and see what happens. Okay, so I've sent John 2 pictures. Okay, and what we've got is that, so what I do is a gloss finish and then put the decals on. I use hot water is what I don't use tepid water. Use hot water and put them in, and then put the decal over onto it. When I take it out of the water, tip it upside down and put it onto a piece of kitchen towel. Just wicks everything away. And then I use the 2 setting solutions. Setter as the underlying one, and then Softer as the overlaying one, and then just let them settle down. And then what I do is, once they're in place, you can see on this picture here, once they're in place, I roll a cotton bud over the top of it before it's dried out, so that cotton bud pushes everything into the detail. Now this picture here, this is 2 Tamiya decals that are in place over armored, rolled armor on the side of a T-34-85 turret. So you can kind of see how they've settled into place. That's a gloss layer and just the decals over the top of that. The next picture, if John puts that one up, that is it under a layer of matte varnish. But what I've done first is I've sprayed over the entire surface again with another layer of GX. So I've trapped the decal between 2 layers of gloss, rather than putting flat over the top of the decal. The gloss settles into the decal, sets hard, and then what that does is that blends the edges into everything else. And then once the matte varnish goes over the top, usually the following day to make sure that it's all settled down, once the matte varnish goes over the top of that, it's not going over the top of a decal edge, it's going over the top of an entirely glossed area, and that's what blends everything in. And as you can see, if you look at this picture here, there's just nothing there. I didn't trim these numbers. I didn't trim around the edges of these. And as far as I can see, or as far as you can see in that, there's no silvering on that. There's no edges to the decals or anything like that. And they've settled perfectly into the surface of the model. I think I might have another picture of it once it was kind of weathered in. So you can see. I'll see if I can send that over as well. So you can just having a quick look now. So this was on the other side of the turret. I'll send this in to John. So yeah, you can see. There you go. Enlarge it up. Put that up again, John.
Oh, I've just taken it down.
Oh,
Go.
John.
I know.
See, this is how you explain.
All right. Well, you know, he turns up late to the party and he starts criticising the wine list. Goodness me.
Yeah.
All right, bear with.
Wine list. Oh, I could do with a glass of wine, actually.
Yeah, well, not on this show, mate. This is a dry show. Come on, let's keep it dry.
This isn't a dry team, though, is it?
No, but it's everything has its context.
Not when somebody's looking forward to Bloodstock. It's not.
No, exactly. Right, there we go.
So there you go. So you can see it's enlarged up. You can see this underneath the surface of those decals. That's the armor plate. But there's nothing fancy about this technique. It's just using the right solutions. Now, I know you can use other solutions, but this works for me. But one of the tricks is to roll that cotton bud over the top of it. Make sure it forces everything in. The great thing about Tamiya decals is they are quite resilient. They're quite resistant to you working them in. Another way you can do it is get a piece of like cotton cloth, just an old T-shirt or something along those lines, and just press it in. And then once you've got it pressed in, then add a layer of Mark Softer, and that will then suck it back in. Because what those two solutions effectively do with Tamiya decals, and why they're designed for Japanese decals, is they effectively melt the decal. Rather than forcing it and crinkling it like Microsolid Set does, it physically melts the decal into the surface. If you do that and then you trap it between a layer of gloss, that's the result that you get. And
I'll tell you something. This will not only melt decals, this will, if you're a little bit too heavy-handed with it, this will actually melt Mr. Colour, varnish, and paint.
Yes,
it will. It's strong stuff, but it works. Well, Drew, we'll go to yours. Then we're actually going to bring in some comments here because we've got some comments. So, yeah. So
my technique. So, again, I start with a shiny surface. In my case, it's GX112 Super Clear, the UV cut Super Clear. I use water that is basically hotter than my fingers can stand.
Right.
I will actually pour water, fresh boiled from the kettle, and be using it to apply Tamiya decals 3 or 4 minutes later.
Yes.
Because what that does is the thing that makes Tamiya decals look thick on the sheet is the adhesive. And the hot water, the hotter you can get the water, the better it activates that adhesive. Yeah. I will put the decal on the model. And like Spencer, I will use a cotton bud to roll any excess out. What I don't tend to put under the decal is any solutions. I will apply it if I need to move the decal. I'll apply the decal to a spot of water, and use that to locate it. I tend to find I don't need any solution under it. Then what I tend to do is I'll take a piece of something like kitchen towel and dip it in the very hot water and then press that on top of the decal, which just helps it settle into all the panel detail. And then I walk away and leave it. Maybe an hour or two later, I'll go back and check. And then if it does need any softening, then I will use a softening solution. But I will only use a softening solution where it needs to be used on the decal. I won't just brush it all over the decal, because 95% of the Tamiya decal will have sucked right down into all the detail immediately anyway, without any trouble at all. And then up until about 18 months ago, I would have, like Spencer said, applied a gloss coat over the decal, and then a flat coat or whatever coat is needed after that. One of the things I tend to find is if you apply a decal and you do find a little bit of silvering, if I apply a coat of GX112, thinned about 85–90% over the top of it, you can actually just watch all that silvering melt into the model and disappear. And then what you've got is a very, very thin coat of varnish over it that's also sucked the decal right down and removed all the silvering. But in addition to that, these days, I will also, after applying the decal, I'll give it a very light sanding with some 3000 grit Trizact. After applying the gloss coat over the decal, I'll give it another polish with Trizact. And then we're ready for the final coat of flat. So I suppose the only significant difference between my method and your guys' methods is that I do not use any setting or softening solutions unless it is required. And again, you can see on that Tomcat, that's the kit decals. They're all the decals straight from the kit, and it's just you can let the results speak for themselves, really, can't you? There's no visible carrier film. They've gone down beautifully, and you know, even those. Did I use a no? We'll forget about the jet pipes. I didn't use the decals for the jet pipes. I master sprayed those, so that was a personal choice. But yeah, you can see on the Lightning and stuff that there and this Tomcat that it's just absolutely fine. And if you can go back to my my camera position, John, I'll just do something similar to what Spencer's just done. So if I want to zoom right in on this. So, like Spence, these decals are applied to a gloss finish on this piece of armour. A little bit of softening solution over the top when needed. And I didn't even gloss over these. That was just a matte coat straight on top. And it's over a rolled, well, you can see the texture, can't you? So it's over a rolled armour texture. And I'm trying to catch the light there. I think I'm catching it.
Yeah.
And there's just nothing to see, is there? There's a little stain there that needs varnishing off, just below the 3. But that's not carrier film, that's a stain from the solutions. But over an initial coat of VMS satin varnish, I don't know, I think that pretty much speaks for itself, don't you?
Yeah,
I've had the same experience with some of the, because I've built a number of Tamiya armor kits recently, and you know, again, we've been putting things onto cast steel, rolled steel textures, you know, all that kind of thing, Zimmer it, and even then, you know, you kind of like, you know, I've prepped the surface with X22, and then put the decal on, and then a little bit of, you know, a little bit of solvent over it. That's, you know, just, I tend to do it just be on the safe side because it's like a reflex with me. But other than that, I don't think I even do any sanding. I think probably the closest I get to that is sometimes I'll just give them a quick polish over with some Scotch-Brite.
Yeah, I mean, I tended to find that the polishing it over with a Trizact kind of almost breaks the skin on the varnish on top of the decal, if you like. And then when I spray the gloss coat, the GX 112 gloss coat over the top, it just soaks right into the decal much better. And then, like I say, you can watch all that silvering just sort of vanish, just kind of.
Now we do have a. This is a good question from Anthony. We've got a couple of comments here, so we're going to bring them up here. But this is from Timothy.
Yeah, I saw one from Timothy. That I'd like to...
Timothy Gamble says, to be fair, if people are having problems with Tamiya decals and not with any other decals in their possession, then their technique must be sound for everything other than Tamiya decals. No. Question.
I'm going to say no, because every decal manufacturer or make on the market requires a different approach. It simply does. Cartograph require a slightly different approach to microscale. They require a slightly different approach to something like BOA. You know, some of the Eastern European stuff is exceptionally thin and is very, very fragile. They're fine, but you've got to know how to deal with them. So even cartograph decals, if you've got the stuff with the flat varnish and the stuff with the gloss varnish, you still use two different techniques with them. So
yeah, that's an interesting point, actually, because if you and the three of us or anybody else was to pick up decals from old SU kits, for instance, we would need a completely different mindset for those decals, which are beautifully printed in those kits.
But oh my word, they're a struggle.
but because they're flatter than a flat thing, on the sheet, but also they have very little kind of adhesive properties as well.
Yes,
So you could use them without a shadow of a doubt. And John and I have both talked about how nice those old Eschi Decal sheets were, and some of them were beautiful to look at on the sheet. But as soon as you started to use them, they were really. So that would be a different thing. I've had the same. I've had problems. So to suggest that I've got an across the board success rate with decals, it's not true, because I've had problems with Eastern European decals all over the place. All ends up using those, and often I've sort of avoided them. So yeah, I do think your technique needs to shift across kits when you are using those, because you are going to find different decals are sort of offering different properties. One other thing, there's another question that sort of links.
All right, so before we move on to that, right? You ready?
Fine scale.
Yeah.
Fine scale modeler, this February 1987, right?
I have that issue in my workroom.
Now this
as well,
because this was
selling it in the UK.
Yeah, this was Paul Boyer. And
Mr. Paul Bowyer,
Paul Boyer. Now here we go. This is illustrative. They did a chart that showed you what decal solutions work with what decals and what ones didn't, and what ones actually destroyed decals.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think again here is a very good. Here we go. The inks of Airfix, Ursel, Model Decal, and Monogram decals ran with the stronger setting solutions. And there we go. We're just going to, for illustrative purposes, no copyright infringement intended. So in answer to your question, Timothy, I agree with what Spencer said. I agree with what Drew says. That sometimes you do have to vary your approach depending on what the decal is. And I do actually think perhaps that is part of the problem, is that people apply a one trick fits all decal kind of system, and it doesn't work that way. You've got to be a bit more flexible. You've got to be able to go, do you know what, if I'm using those decals, I will not touch Microsol or Microset. Or if I'm doing these ones, I need to use slightly hotter water. Or if I'm using if I'm using old model decals, classic model decals, I will completely remove all the adhesive. I'll flip the decal over because it's that kind of it's like kind of like really kind of gummy adhesive. And in fact, what happened with this is illustrative. So I'm getting distracted by reading fine scale modeler now. This is illustrative on that Matchbox Starfighter I did for your book, and I think I may even have mentioned it in the write up for it. At one stage, I actually put the code on the front of the fuselage, the serial number. I actually got them, reversed them. I actually put on the surface the wrong side, so that actually it was reading backwards. Okay, it stuck to the surface, regardless of the fact that there wasn't any adhesive in place. It stuck to the surface because it was sticking to some X22 that was extremely smooth. And I had to kind of literally flood it with water, float it back off eventually after about 10 minutes, then flip it over and do that. But again, the point there is I'm using old model decals. I'm adopting a completely different technique because I actually have to get rid of all the adhesive off those decals because they're just get rid of that, they're fine. But
I think the problem that we've got with decals is that it is such a fundamental part of what we do. Especially if you're an aircraft modeler, but also if you're an armor modeler as well, and a car modeler, obviously, because racing cars, that kind of thing. But it's such a fundamental part of what we do, and yet often I read that modelers don't really enjoy the process. Often I see I hate applying decals. I'd rather do anything but apply decals.
Too many stencils.
Yeah, too many stencils, too many of this, too many of that, and everything. So it almost becomes a step in the future that everybody's dreading before they get there, because the decals are always extremely fragile to apply. That becomes an issue, and unlike paint, you've got essentially a flat object that's then got to suck down over detail, and you've got to make it blend in. So it becomes a really tricky thing to do. But underpinning decaling is a fairly simple system. It's you put it in water, you float the design off, put it onto the model, and then you wick the water away, and blah blah blah. It's fundamentally an easy system, and it's been in place much like a car rolls on rubber tires and has done since the dawn of time. Decaling is fundamentally the same as it's always been. It's only a shift in the materials used to get them to look painted on that's kind of changed. But you do need to shift your technique. You do need to move it. It's one of the reasons why Deco have 3 different setting solutions. Jenny Corriman has realised that those 3 solutions are necessary for different types of decals. So he creates a mild solution that's necessary for the thinner decals. He's got a medium solution. He's got a strong solution. And the strong solution...
That strong solution. Oh, yeah. My Lord.
Yeah, and the strong solution works to get decals to curve around double curves, that kind of thing, to settle over larger bulges on aircraft, over bigger panels of detail.
But if you just brush that straight over a decal that you just applied just because it's a softening solution, you're in for a bad time.
You are, yeah.
You're in for a bad time. But talking, you say Danny's done 3 different Deco setting solutions. If I go to my vertical here, although you can't get it in this country because they don't import it at the moment, there's 2 of the 3 Tamiya Mark fits. But there's also a standard. The Mark Fit Strong's good. The Mark Fit Super Strong, like the Deco stuff, if you use it willy-nilly, you're going to have a bad time. If you use it in a targeted way, it's good. It's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic.
I've been desperately trying to get hold of those 2 solutions. I can't find them anywhere.
I ordered them from Asia.
I'm going to have to try and get some of that.
But in addition to that, something else that Tamiya have released that you really do have to search to find are these little things here.
Oh wow!
And they're decal adhesives, and you can see there's a standard one there, and there's a softener type there. So even Tamiya appreciate that. Different techniques are required for different decals. Even on their own decals, you might occasionally need a bit of this decal adhesive. And the decal adhesive is pretty much what Mr. Mark Setter is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got that milky white color. It's effectively an adhesive. But it just shows that even, Tamiya do 5 different decal.
Yeah.
I haven't got one here, but they do 5 different decal solutions in their range.
I think sorry, John. It's certainly worth thinking as well that modelers are under the illusion as well that applying decals is something that is unique to what they do in terms of difficulty. But if you think about a car, a full-size car manufacturer applying vinyl stickers to a car, they have a similar problem with it. They just use a different system. They use heat to blend those in, but they're still stretching a 2-dimensional sheet over a 3-dimensional shape. That's what we're doing, and it's that sort of understanding. If I can quickly go back, John, before you come back in, Pavel asked a question earlier on and said, "Is it essentially what he said was, is it down to newer decals or older decals?" I can answer that. Because the T3485 that I built that features those markings was an old kit, wasn't a new kit that I bought. That was something that had been in the loft for 25 years. So I can't say whether or not the decals have changed in terms of the way that they're printed or the way they're produced. All I can offer is my experience of using the system that I worked, and the only thing I can suggest is that I can only go by that experience of using older decals and newer decals and approaching them in the same way to get the same results. So
now, Pavel also says, "I have no problems with applying Tamiya decals over details, but I do find that after application overcoating with clear coat, the decal film edge is much more noticeable than in most aftermarket decals. Apparently, I don't know how to apply decals." I don't think it's not a case of saying people don't know how to apply decals, Pavel. I think it's I was just going to say, to draw a parallel, applying decals, it's a bit like gardening. It's a bit like growing things, right? The theory is very simple. Get a seed, stick it in the soil, it grows. You see, if you actually get involved in growing things, you realize that no, you some things respond to being activated more by heat, some more by humidity, some prefer soils that are more gritty, some prefer soils that are more clay. So even though the actual process in itself is very simple, seed, soil, tomatoes, the actual kind of the actual nuances of it are sometimes a little bit more kind of involved. And Pavel also goes on to say, he says, I also overcoat decals with gloss coat before applying final flat or satin coat. I also use GX100, but one has to be careful with it. I had decals, cartograph ones, crack after being overcoated with it.
Yeah, I had the same thing happen on a Porsche, on a Tamiya Porsche, and that was because the decal actually, I think what happened was I was rushing it, so the underlying paint hadn't dried before I put the decal on. So I put a gloss coat on the top of it, and all 3 layers were drying out at dissimilar times.
This used to be a huge problem with
and they cracked
paints, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
a huge problem with Tamiya gloss paint because it wasn't curing, and it was still moving.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
So people were putting a gloss coat over the top, which was setting hard really quickly before the undercoat had cured. Yeah. And the undercoat carried on curing and moving. Then it would just crack and pull.
And it just shattered. Yeah. I mean, I should perhaps explain to Pavel. I wasn't suggesting that people didn't know what they were doing. It was more a frustration that every time I see this, it seems to be like a blanket accusation, and that blanket accusation just sort of follows through, and then it's almost like, well, I had the same experience, therefore it must be the product, and that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that sometimes we need to adjust the way that things work. I talk about not being able to layer Vallejo paints. It's not the paint that's at fault, it's my technique. My technique's rubbish. So that's kind of where I was going with it. It wasn't an accusation that people don't know what they're doing or can't apply the decals. It's just that sometimes you need to sort of think slightly outside of that box and be aware that there are nuances within the technique that may help you along.
And I'm just looking, and I've literally just reached over to my left and pulled that lot out of the just literally to my left, and I've just pulled that lot off of a shelf.
Yeah,
and that is
solver set.
And
I've never used that, and
I've probably got some others somewhere. But you know, every one of these I've used at some point and still do use now, but for different jobs. You know,
I tell you what I do like, what I've tried, and I think is pretty good. Have you tried the ammo one? The ammo one's nice.
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
But for microscale decals, why would I use anything else but that?
Yeah,
that's just why would you? You know, for Tamiya decals, for most other Japanese decals, those, you know, the Deco, if the only option is to take off and nuke it from orbit, obviously.
Yeah, that's the nuclear option, isn't it?
Yeah. Although I have to say, they are pretty much of a muchness. They are both pretty much nuclear options. And I should say this solver set is the old formula from about 20 odd years ago. I got a box of 12 of them from Robin Powell one time when he came back from America back in about 2000. So that's the old stuff, which is even more.
So what's the constituent of that? Is it like acetic acid or something? Is it just vinegar?
Do you know what?
Pure white vinegar.
No, there's no vinegar smell whatsoever. It's something. It's not solvent based. Trying to think. This is where I end up sniffing everything.
Yeah. See if you can find one that's.
Yeah, finding one that's similar. It's funny that stuff there, the Tamiya super strong, has got, that's my 3D printer just finished, has got absolutely no aroma whatsoever.
Nothing at all.
You think it would have a, you'd think
yeah.
I can't. There's nothing there. There really isn't. But no, that isn't an acetic acid based. That's
yeah, weird. Interesting.
We're just going to run through some of the comments here, because we do want to kind of, people are, do want to get people involved tonight. I think this is a, we probably will run over a bit tonight, but hey ho. But Mike Williams says hot towel compress, like Drew says, works like a charm. The decals for me works like a charm. All decals for me. I'll get my tongue in a minute. Chris Alliong says, this is some great info on Tamiya decals. The last time I used Tamiya decals, I got it to about 95% satisfaction. I used warm water, and I think I like Drew's method of very hot water.
Like I say, I will boil the kettle, pour the water into the cup I'm going to use, and I will be using that to apply Tamiya decals 3 or 4 minutes later. So that's probably still 85 degrees centigrade. That water. Yeah. It's far hotter than you'd be comfortable putting your fingers in, put it that way.
Stephen Pryor says, I use Johnson's Clear as a gloss coat. I use water from a boiled kettle. I brush clear onto the area for decaling, then apply the decal. I press it down with a piece of damp kitchen towel, then brush some more clear on top of it. When decaling is complete, I then put another coat of clear on the model. Which, that's a technique I've never used, and it's not one that I'm particularly familiar with, but I'm not gonna knock it, because if it works, it works.
I've used it and it works.
Yeah.
Just quite often, these techniques, you find yourself trying them out and using them, and going, "Oh, that works," and then you don't use them because your existing method that you're comfortable with works anyway.
Yeah, and as I say, to kind of go back to another comment from Timothy here, this isn't, honestly, tonight we're not saying there is a right method, there is a wrong method. We're saying, look, there's 3 modelers. In our experience, these are the approaches that we use, and these are the kind of like the finishes and the performances we're getting out of the decals in the end, which we don't see as an issue with the decals themselves. So but Timothy says, I don't see much difference between methods for different decals. I generally gloss if not using a gloss or satin paint. Then provided I use the usual decal set and soften products, Microsoft and Microset and Microsoft for years, my method isn't actually different for kit decals or aftermarket. Which is an entirely that's an entirely legitimate approach.
If it works for you, it works for you. All we've done is share our opinions and our methods for getting the results, and I think we've adequately shown the results we get.
Yeah, and as I say, Timothy. Oh, can we have an Anthony on so I can call in Timothy? We can balance it up then. As I said, is that this is from Fine Scale Model. This is 35 years ago, and it is like a table that shows what the setting solutions work with which decals. I think, to be fair, the idea that there is shall we, like I say, there is roughly a technique to applying decals, but from that point onwards, each individual kind of decal sheet out there, different decal manufacturer, different brand, may require that slightly different approach. I say may, I'm not saying will or must, but I'm saying it may require that slightly different approach, in the same way that I might have to have a slightly different approach if I'm growing tomatoes or sweet corn.
I think what we ought to do, as we mentioned it earlier on, is the 3 of us ought to build an old Eschi kit with those old Eschi decals, because that would be presumably amongst the trickiest that you could apply to a model, I would think. Because of that lack of, I certainly never got to a point where I could apply them properly.
And I think it's important to know that those decals were cartograph.
They were, yeah.
This is where cartograph started.
Yeah, see, I've got an old F4E Phantom in the original. Was it in a portrait box? I think it might have been that original F4 think it might have been. Anyway, but that's got the original decals in it. I think there's a sharp-mouthed one in there. Yeah, if I remember rightly. But you know, it certainly. There are certain decal companies I don't get on with at all, and historically haven't got on with. I mentioned Eastern European decals. Zvezda decals I don't really get on with that much. And I know Drew loves Zvezda and pretty much everything about them, but their decals I don't really like that much. And also I don't like ICM decals either. Don't get on with them either.
I love them. See, ICM. It's funny, you mentioned Zvezda and ICM, and my last two completions are Zvezda.
And ICM don't like their decals at all. So, and that is undoubtedly down to technique and sort of my approach to it. I just thought it'd be interesting to sort of see, you know, have this conversation tonight, because Tamiya they do stand in a field of one when it comes to having their decal sheets torn a new one.
I would say Hasegawa do as well, but Hasegawa don't seem to do much of a market force these days for anybody outside of Japan. But for decades, Hasegawa had exactly the same problems or issues leveled at them, along with their whites not being white.
Yeah, that is a bit of a snag.
See, the thing is, it is if you use white. If you use Mr. Colour's Insignia white, which isn't white, as the white, the decals match perfectly.
Yeah.
So what they've done is match their white decals to a particular paint.
Yeah, I mean, there could be an argument that we use like refrigerator white to paint our models when airplanes.
Yeah, when it's not white.
Yeah, that's the Zvezda kit decals. I actually think I do seem to remember I actually took some photographs of this actual process, and I think I described it as sprayed turret with X22, put decal on, went and put kettle on. That was it. Made a cup of tea. That was that was the entire that decal. I probably did put a little bit of on them in the end because, like I say, even I'm a slave to my particular my particular kind of habits when it comes to applying decals. But when I sometimes see it's their methods of doing things, but it's the route that people go where they're polishing the surface and they're doing this and they're doing this and they're doing this, and there's also we'll lob this one in for a discussion tonight, is this idea of if you're applying varnish coats, you are obliterating detail.
Not unless you're applying it
with a full-size spray gun. Yeah.
If you're using an airbrush, you've really got to go some to do that.
Because you're only putting microns of color on when you're using even a paintbrush. Actually, even if you're doing that kind of thing, the only way that I can see that would happen is if you were using 2K clears, that a high build clear. You'd be laying, but you'd still be able to see the detail. So I'm not sure about that, but that does seem to kind of crop up, doesn't it? Unfortunately, but that's just one of those things. People don't want to spray glosses. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, again, we are not going.
We don't really want to go down that route, do we?
No, but we don't want
to discuss that issue any further.
No, I think we've got as far as we can.
Moving on.
As I say, we are not saying there is a right and a wrong method. What we are, all we're saying is these are the methods that we employ. These are the results that we get.
And actually, there's kind of levels as well, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure all of us have admired, those the car and bike guys who lay on carbon fiber, over like multiple compound curves and get it to look like it's painted. I mean, I've sort of scratched my head and looked at that and thought, how on earth have they managed to do that? So there's kind of levels of it as well. And the airliner models, Drew builds airliners, but airliner modelers as well, getting those decals to lay down over curves of fuselages and everything. It's that's like another level of ability, I think.
There is a film out there, and I'll try and dig it out and pop the link up onto the timeline, which is from a commercial model maker, and it's showing the production line of people taking the cheat line decals off and putting them straight onto these fuselages, and it's a marvel to watch. But the one thing you do notice is the production. This is like the 1960s, 1960s.
I think I've seen this video.
Yeah, but the one thing that you do notice is they're using lots of water, and the surface they're putting it onto by default is like a glossy surface. Anyway, Anthony Bird, who we're going to call Timothy for balance. You like this one, Drew? He says, anyone going to mention Edward decals? As I go and put my Sherman away, not a metaphor.
No, I'm not.
No.
I mean, there's not a lot I can add to the video I put on YouTube of, excuse me, my experimentation with them. I don't like them. And quite apart from the application of them, I don't like the printing quality. I don't think the printing quality is very good. That said, I'm still, even now, experimenting with them and seeing if there's a way to get them to work successfully. So I haven't given up with Edward decals. I just think that when they move to their own in-house printing, whereas what Spencer was saying earlier on about would Tamiya really, this company that's the most perfect pretty much in the world, would they market a kit with decals that didn't work? Well, yeah, Edward have. They're another one of the leading companies these days, which is is unarguable for the enthusiasts. They're one of the biggest companies going now, and their decals are demonstrably poorer quality than they were when they were using Cartograph. Yeah. I understand why they stopped using Cartograph. Because of lead times and finding slots in the production schedule and stuff. I just think that the solution they chose is a retrograde step. That said, I'm still experimenting with them. So
I got a comment here from Robbie1261, because sadly Robbie1260 couldn't join us tonight, and he says, has anyone done an updated version of that decal chart considering the vast array of decal solutions? Robbie, I think perhaps head over to Fine Scale Modeler, either their forum or if they've got a Facebook page. I actually think that's actually a legitimate thing to ask them. They may have actually done that, because the thing that Fine Scale Modeler have done quite frequently is that they have gone back to stuff that they've done in kind of like 4 or 5 year cycles. So every 4 years they would do an article in Fine Scale how to apply decals, and then 4 years later they do it again. And just they're constantly going through that as a technique. So the chances are Fine Scale may have actually already done that. If they haven't, then I think it's worth asking them to do that. I'm sure somebody's done one out there, and I'm sure everybody watching tonight, I'm sure somebody out there is going to say, "Yep, here is a link to one." So if the Baker Street runners, do your jobs. Get out there and get out there, do your jobs. I'm sorry, that was rather presumptive of me. Get out there and do your thing. I meant to say was go out there and see if you can find it. And a question here from Douglas Hunter. It's a good question though, Robbie. That is. That it is, because I've just pulled that out from my pile of magazines here. 34-year-old modeling article, still relevant today, still proving its worth today. Douglas Hunter says, Spencer, how did you get on with the Hasegawa Falke decals? I had a terrible time with them. They seem to fall apart.
Well, simply, I didn't use them. The decals that are on my Falk are from Hasegawa, from Italeri's F104G. They're all Italian Air Force markings on my Falk. So that's what they are. They're actually Cartograph decals on that, and all the unit markings and everything on. So my Falk is actually an Italian Air Force scheme. Could I also answer the question below that, John, if that's okay with Timothy Campbell? He's put up there. It's funny the gloss, no gloss becomes undiscussable. I still generally gloss out of habit. Yes. So if I can answer that as succinctly as I can, and it will give you an indication of where I sit in this argument without sort of overblowing this. And it's this. Decaling is a very simple process, as I mentioned earlier on. You cut out the design, you put it in some water, you slide that decal off onto the model, you put it onto the model, you wick the water away, let it dry out. That is essentially the process. Okay. Now then, if you then do that over a gloss finish, 90% of the time with larger decals, you will remove the chance of silvering under those decals just by using that process. Water, slide it onto the model, wick the water away, let it dry. 90% of the time, that decal will not silver over a gloss finish. You can then overspray it with a matte finish. When you start to include or start to use setting solutions, you take what is effectively a basic technique and you push it into an advanced area. If I'm explaining to a student or pupil or a beginner how to apply decals, I will not tell them to use setting solutions from day one. And the reason for that is because those setting solutions can often, as we mentioned earlier, be aggressive to the finish underneath. Okay. If you've already got if you've got an inert system like water slide decals, I try and keep that system as inert as possible for as long as possible until they get a handle on it. When I hear of people saying, well, I use a lot of setting solutions and I can get decals to settle down over a matte finish, my instinct, and I'm open to be proved wrong, and please don't take this as in any kind of way a barbed attack on anybody that does this. I'm open to be proved right. My instinct is you've either had to work at smoothing that finish out, thereby making it a glosser finish, or you've applied way more setting solutions than those decals really should have over the top of them to settle them down over that. And the thing with setting solutions is they don't really deal with microscopic layers of trapped air which causes the silvering. Those setting solutions aren't designed for that. They're really designed just to pull them down over the detail or pull them down into detail. And so the reason why you can still get silvering, even on a gloss finish, is because that area you're putting a decal isn't completely glossed or isn't completely smooth. So so it's that elevation of a simple system into an advanced system. And so I always say the same thing. Show me a matte model, a matte painted model that you've put, yeah, there you go. A matte painted model that you've put decals on without setting solutions, and prove to me that you can do that and remove silvering. I don't believe, in my experience of however long I've been doing this nonsense, I don't believe it's possible to do that. I do believe it's possible for you to put a decal over a gloss finish and not have silvering in anywhere near the same level. That's my stance on all of this. Why? Yeah. Why, for the sake of a simple coat of paint, would you go through all of the system, all of that nous to put solutions over it and keep working at it, keep working at it, keep working at it, when you put a gloss layer down, put the decal down, and then, like Drew said, walk away, make a cup of tea, and then come back to it later on?
Well, actually, that was me who said that was me who said walk away, make a cup of tea, but that was the point I made as well. Well, I said it as well. Fair enough.
Yeah. That's my stance on it, really.
Yeah, but that was the point I was making with that Svezda thing, was that it took me all of 2 minutes, 90 seconds, 2 minutes to put on a coat of X22 on that. Just working the turret, misting that coat of X22 on. Let that kind of I tend to let that dry for about an hour just to make sure it's really properly hard. Then got those turret decals on, put them on, and that was it. Wicked away the water, looked at them and thought, well, that looks fine. Went and made a cup of tea. That was it. That was my entire engagement with applying those decals. Then when I checked them, kind of like end of the day, they look fine. Next day, I just put the clear coat on, the whatever it was, the matte coat. That was it. Job done. The point was that all I was doing was putting the decal on, and that was it. It's like the surface is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting for me. Yeah. And as I said with that 104, where I actually put the decal on back to front, so I was actually putting the outer surface onto the model. It stuck to that surface because it was that nice glossy kind of X22 surface. It was sticking to that without any adhesive whatsoever. Would I have been able to have done that if I was trying to apply that to a matte finish? Probably not.
No,
it wouldn't have done it. But
listen,
another thing. 5 coats of that over your decal to make it settle down is far riskier than 1 coat of that under your decal.
That's my point, really. That's sort of where I am with all of this. And we've seen plenty of evidence of how difficult that can be when extra work is placed over the top of a decal to get it to settle down on a matte finish.
And I think with what Timothy, you just had Timothy's comment up there, didn't you? Use it to get into panel lines and other recessed details. Tim, I do that as well. But what I do is I will use this and a very fine brush and only brush it onto the bits of the decal where it's needed. So if I want it to soak into, if I want it to go into one specific panel line, I will only apply it over that panel line. I'll run a brush load of it down that panel line. What I'm saying is that applying the decal and then just giving it a general heavy coat of setting solution or softening solution, I should say, is a really, really easy way to have a bad time.
But then I do that. But I do that all the time, though. That's the thing. I see. We've got a difference of technique here.
No,
I say
that it can be the way to be able. It's not by no means is it definite that you're going to have a bad time. But it just seems to me that I'm wasting setting solution or softening solution. If 95% of the decal is down fine, and it's only a panel line or one piece of detail, why would I brush the whole decal with it?
It's a good point.
It's just another, I mean, this stuff is, £5, £6, £7 a bottle. It's not massively expensive, no, but I'd rather do it that way and not run out halfway through doing a model. So, yeah, different technique. You have to stand by your result, not your technique. If the technique works for you, the technique works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what we're discussing here is all three of us are kind of bemused at the torches and pitchforks attitude towards Tamiya decals whenever it comes up.
Yeah,
because we don't have that problem.
It really shouldn't be as contentious as it often becomes.
We don't have that problem because we've adapted our technique to use them.
Yes, and it's and as I say, going back to that fine scale article, is that from 34 years ago demonstrates that a kind of that you have to. Well, I say you have to. Sometimes you may need to approach each different brand of decals with a slightly different approach. Like I said, like you would between growing tomatoes and sweet corn. It's just same thing, but slightly different. Spencer's intently looking at something. He's either looking at the football scores.
No, I'm trying to find. I actually took some. I can't find them now. I actually took some photographs of the Airfix Jet Provis.
Jet Provis, yes.
Do you remember I took those pictures and I applied decals to a gloss coat on one of them and then a matte coat on the other, and to show how they silvered. I can't find the pictures.
I'll find them for you. Don't worry.
Yeah,
if you two fill in. You two fill in. I'll just go looking.
But there was something that it was kind of, and it was just like a little step by step that I did, and I showed, and the decals were applied to the model without setting solutions. That was the trick. I'd sort of applied them over the surface of this model, and I've done them without setting solutions, and you could kind of see the way that this worked. But it is singularly contentious, the application of decals within our industry and within the hobby. It seems to be, and it really does throw up. It's like talking about football or music. It's like it's a very oddly tribal thing that you sort of get involved in this. I can't think of too many other aspects of our hobby that causes quite so much consternation.
Which is why this evening's discussion about, to me, Tamiya decals aside, I don't really tend to discuss it anymore.
Yes.
If people ask me how I did something, I'll tell them.
Yes.
If they then go on to tell me I'm wasting my time doing it that way and this is the way I should do it, they're going to get 2 words from me. Pretty short shrift, because I'm not prepared to discuss it. You know, if you want to do something different and it works for you, you do you.
Yes, I think.
If you ask me how I'm doing it, I'll tell you. I'm happy to. But I won't have somebody telling me that my method is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because the results show that it clearly isn't.
I think I might have found them, John. I'm not sure.
No, I'm still having a hunt. I'm just doing a quick fill in, Drew. Tell him a joke. No, God, no, don't tell him a joke. No.
What?
Don't
Unbelievable.
No, those Drew jokes.
No. Traveling salesman. We've heard them all.
No faith.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, no. I think
any good biscuits.
Well, I was doing some cat sitting in Bristol yesterday. I did polish off about 3 or 4 plain chocolate digestives. They were quite good. But I was mindful of the fact that I really didn't want to kind of plow through the entire packet. I was writing my op-ed for Brett, so I decided to leave it at 3 or 4 biscuits. Not leave them 3 or 4 biscuits. I decided to leave it at 3 or 4 biscuits for me. So no, we can't find it, Spence. Don't worry. We'll come back to it. I'm sure it will.
I'm sure it will arrive back at some point, but can't seem to find where they are. I don't even remember when I built the model. To be honest, it was quite a while back, wasn't it? When did it come out?
It was 2013, 2014.
No, the Jet Prof was about 2015. So.
I bought Aldi, so I got one quite a bit later than that. So
yeah, actually, Brian Wilton makes a very good point here. Actually, and he says it's the same argument for different paints. You use different air pressure, thinners, and mixes for different paints practice. Yeah, do you know what, Brian? That actually does nail it, because when you get people, they say even if they say I've got some Tamiya German yellow. What's the best thinning ratio for it? Well, it all depends what thinner you've got, what airbrush you've got, what compressor you've got. It's
a question that comes up quite. I've had people come back to me on my YouTube videos and say that airbrushing you did was absolutely fantastic. What pressure and thinning ratio and stuff did you use? And I in all honesty, I can only go. Well, I don't know.
I'm a bit like that as well. I have to say,
kind of threw a bit of that in, threw a bit of this in, and that was it until it worked and it came through.
Martin Kovac's the same. He says people are always asking him what are his paint and thinner ratios. He tries to be kind of like say, well, I roughly did it 2 to 1, but I always say that your airbrush will tell you if it's happy or not. You'll hear it. Your airbrush will be then it's not happy. But Brian is spot on. Is that again? It's the theory is you thin some paint, you put it in your airbrush, you spray it, and you get a lovely finish. In theory, but there are not only are there different thinning ratios and pressure ratios that you need for different paints and different airbrushes. There's actually different techniques to spraying depending on what paint you're using. If I'm spraying water-based Vallejo, I have to be a little bit more kind of hands-off because there are methods that you're using when you're using Tamiya or Gunzi or any of the kind of the hot acrylics, shall we call them, or lacquers, is actually you can be quite brutal sometimes because they flash off so quickly that you can just kind of like carry on like that. With water-based acrylics, the water is doing the heavy lifting there. If you just go over it a little bit, that's it. They flood. And you're waiting for water to evaporate, which takes a little bit longer than a solvent. So yes,
I've never had any excess with those paints at all. I just cannot spray vinyl acrylics at all.
No, because they're no fun. They're not enjoyable to spray. Well, you constantly feel like you're on the edge of disaster with them.
Well, you two stick around, and I'll teach you a thing or two. You know, so I might be doing some modelling demos. You should turn up and watch. I'll show you how it's done, boys.
But there was a beeping in the background just now. Look, that's some 3D printing I've been doing this evening.
Anything interesting?
That is hopefully, by the time it's sorted, Spence, hopefully that is going to be the fins at the back of the torpedo on the Beaufort.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, the kit ones are quite. It's a difficult shape to print. It's all flat surfaces, but that's really difficult to mould.
They're a little heavy-handed, aren't they?
Yeah, so I've kind of I drew some different ones up, and there's 3 different orientations there just to see which came out best. So
it's an odd part, that, in the kit, because the rest of the kit is so delicately done, and then you have that.
Yeah. I think it's because they try to print it in one piece. But it's like I say, the thing is, you think simple flat plates, which they effectively are. They're just planks of wood that are used to stabilize a torpedo until it hits the water, and then they break away. But dead flat surfaces are really difficult to mold.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're certainly overly thick as well. And but I have to say, as a slight, obviously we'll both have updates this week, but I finished all of the sub-assembly work on the model, so it's all ready to paint now. It's all ready.
I think the biggest thing I found this week is I was trying to work out how to get the turret in after you've applied that the cowling part around the turret.
Okay.
And you absolutely can't do it.
No.
So I'm gonna have to build the turret and then paint the turret, and then install the turret and mask it, and then put that piece over the top, which is a real pain. But
yeah, I've got a slight issue as well. Is that I was going to paint the wings separately because they slot on and they're beautiful fit.
Yeah.
But there's that triangular fillet that comes out of the back of the sort of the fuselage where it joins onto the wings, and then it overlaps onto the top of the top of the wings. And I thought I'll get away with that, but you can't really, can you? That the trailing edge of that where it joins onto the lower wing is going to need filling slightly because it's got a slight overlap.
To be honest, I haven't checked. I haven't.
Yeah, it's got a slight, and I thought, I'll get away with it. I'll paint it. But if you look at it, it's not completely perfect at the way it trails off at the back of that. But the fit of this kit overall is amazing. You can see that, I'm doing it in metal. So if you tip that towards you, you'll see that there's where it joins along that trailing edge.
What, along here, you mean?
Yeah, no, further where it curves, so you can sort of see right along the edge. You can see that there will be a slight join there. But overall, I have to say, I'm still really impressed with it. It goes together beautifully, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely like I said on my my initial comment was terrible plastic fits like a glove.
yeah, the plastic is awful. I have to say, but even all of the complexity of the interior, when you slide you don't have to glue anything in there, do you?
No.
You know,
my interior isn't glued in place in the model.
Yeah, just work around.
The wing spars hold it all in, don't they?
They do. Yeah. Overall, still very impressed with it, I have to say.
Yeah, it's
a really nice model.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. Any other business?
No, not from me.
Are you going to be drinking that, or are you just?
It's isopropyl alcohol with resin in it, so I'd probably best not.
No,
yeah, good idea. Yes.
No.
No. The only thing is, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier because I sort of missed. Mini art come up trumps again.
What have they done? What have I missed?
Air conditioning units and satellite dishes.
I'd missed that. We'll be talking about that on Sunday then. Yeah.
Excellent. Brilliant.
It is just tremendous.
That's your next zombie diorama on the way then.
I'm now thinking that I may do another Watch Dogs diorama. Actually, I'm thinking that might be That might be the thing. But yes, very nice.
Right. Robbie 1261. Robbie, if you message us on our Facebook page, you are this week's winner of, oh, look at this. Oh, it's only an interesting modeling company button badge. The fashion accessory that nobody wants to be seen going out without, or indeed with. But yeah, message us, Robbie, and one will be winging its way to you. So on that note, so if nobody's got anything else, nobody,
no,
nothing?
I don't think so. It's been a remarkably.
It's like I say, Anthony. I call him Anthony again.
Tim.
I know. I'm sorry. Timothy makes he makes this point, and I think it is worth. I think we are he says it's about this. It's funny that the gloss no gloss discussion becomes undiscussable. Well, do you know what? It really shouldn't be. It should be discussable because it's just a technique. That's all it is. It's not life and death. It's not national sovereign territory. It's not politics or religion or anything like that. It is a modeling technique. It should be able to be discussed for what it is, which is a technique.
Discussable in the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
which and hopefully we'll try and make it discussable. Especially like tonight. We've had disagreements. I think is a good way of putting it, but we've had disagreements, and we've had disagreements in technique and how people's approaches. But we come back to the point: is if it works for you, then it works for you.
I think it's also worth pointing out that the three of us disagree on technique on a regular basis.
Yeah, we do,
don't we? And the idea that we come on here and that we're in any way or sense of us there being sort of consistency between the three of us is simply not the case. We always disagree.
But we all stand by our results, not our techniques.
Yes, absolutely. My technique with a lot of the things that I build is really shocking. If you saw how I airbrush and you saw the state of the airbrushes sat on the spray booth and how I never clean them out, or I mix one painting on top of another without blowing them through properly, I think you'd be staggered by how lackadaisical I can be.
We all are.
But it's not the technique. It's the model. It's the finished model. You do it.
As I say, we have, and this is how it should be. We have differences in techniques. We have, differences in approaches. But we disagree. But there's no rancor. We don't hold a grudge. Unless it comes to biscuits. I hold terrible grudges about it, and I want everybody to agree with me and think that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread.
See, 3D printing is the future.
Oh, there you go. That's nice.
So any other business? No, look at my 3D printing. That classifies as any other business then, doesn't it?
See, I'm wondering if Drew will be happy to send me one of those. Drew, can I have one of those?
Maybe.
Oh, you're very
nice. You did it with the torpedo, mate. I didn't realise you were. I thought the prototype.
No, I'm basically what I'm doing with it. This is any other business.
In fact, all three of those orientations have worked. So.
Yeah, what I'm doing with it is I'm going to do it as the unpainted demonstrator, but I'm going to load it up, so it's going to have torpedo on. It's going to have the gun pointing out the side of the fuselage. So basically, show off everything. So it's like the top brass are showing off their new aeroplane to the local politicians who won't even remember seeing it the following day, and then we'll cancel it 3 days later because it's far too expensive.
Yeah.
That's the story of my Beaufort. It's how my Beaufort was shown off to the local politicians who thought it was a fighter and then cancelled it 3 days later because it was redundant in the middle of a war. There you go.
Jolly good. Right.
Well, there we go. Yeah.
Well, as I say, we from tonight, we're trying to have a sensible, decent conversation, and we are all, the doors are always open here to anybody watching this. The doors are always open to a decent conversation. If you disagree with us, you disagree with us.
Which is why I managed to sneak in at 7:45.
Yeah. If you disagree with us, we'll ban you and block you. But apart from that,
On that
I'm
note,
joking.
I'd have to go some way to be banned and blocked from essentially one of my own pages, wouldn't I? Although I don't see that being unlikely. You were. Yes.
I was.
Yeah, well, all you have to do is set up another profile. You know that's how.
No, it wasn't that. It was a. Yeah, I'm going to mention. No, it was a page I set up, and I gave people admin things on it, and then they unadmin me. So it was like, cheers.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
Yes, I don't bear a grudge.
That's quite a spectacular way of doing it, isn't it? Just give us the admin privileges, and then we'll block you.
You've all got admin privileges here, and even privileges and privileges as well. Right, on that, it's falling apart now. It started off badly, and it's getting better. Yes. On that note, we will be back on. Like I say, we will eventually do the transition of the news show from a Sunday to a Wednesday, but we just need to get a few Wednesdays out of the way.
I feel like I'm killer and the farmer's approaching with a shotgun. Cut.
Yeah, indeed.
Who's back for Sunday then?
I'm at the football Sunday. Unfortunately,
You're at the football.
Football's for me.
Oh,
all right, Drew's back on Sunday. We'll try and get Jen in to talk about her airbrush if it's turned up by then.
Airbrush. Is this new airbrush day?
I see that you mentioned airbrushes, and he's a burning. It's like, oh, what's this? What's this? Oh.
I must admit that I was watching one of Angel's fantastic painting videos. He's the guy that does all the fancy stuff, and he was going through one of the Harder and Steenbeck airbrushes and how wonderful that was, and I was like,
yeah, no.
Right. Come on. That's it. I need to kick you lot out now because I need to go and have some food. So anyway, we'll be back on Sunday, and we'll be talking about obviously mini art air conditioners and satellite dishes. So until then, as always, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we'll see you very, very soon. Thank you for coming on tonight. See you later. Bye for now.